Guys, Mrs. Opdyke. I'm going to review with you the vertical shift. This was the last lesson that we had before everything happened. So I just want to go over this again, show you how to do it. You have some homework problems to do for me afterwards, so I'm just going to do 2 lessons. So first, y equals, let's do 2 sine of 3x minus pi plus 2. Now remember, this was your vertical shift. This meant that we're taking it and moving it up 2 places. Everything else is going to be the same. You're going to have the amp, which is 2, the frequency, which is 3, the period, which is 2 pi over 3, and then we really need to find 1/4 of the period. Okay, and the reason we do that is that's how we're going to move. So 2 pi over 3 times 1/4 is going to be pi over 6. Okay, this is how you're going to move between each interval, and we need a starting point. I'll do the starting point here. Am I still on film? Yep. Starting point is 3x minus pi equals 0, 3x equals pi, x equals pi over 3. Now remember, I'm starting at 1/3 and I'm moving every time by a 1/6. I can't add 1/6 to 1/3. They don't have the same denominator. So I will make this into a denominator of 6. Okay, so now we have 2 pi over 6 is where I'm going to start, and I'm going to count by pi over 6. I'm going to draw myself a little graph. Now I know I have here a vertical shift of 2. That meant I'm moving everything up 2. So I'm making my graph a little lower. That means my new midline is at 2. I'm going to have a dotted line through 2. Since my amp is 2, from my midline, I'm moving up 2 units, go 3, 4, and down 2 units, 1, 0. Okay, so now let's put in my values. I start at 2 pi over 6. Let's make sure, I don't know if this is actually on film. I'm going to try and adjust that. All right, I think it's there. And I'm going to move by 1/6, so then I'm at 3 pi over 6, 4 pi over 6, 5 pi over 6, 6 pi over 6. I'm only going to do 1 curve. Every time you do this, I want 2 complete curves, but to save time in the tape, I'm only doing 1 curve. It's a sine, so I'm going to start at the mid, and then I'm going to go to the amp. The amp is at 4, 2 off the mid. Then I'm going to go to back to the mid, then to the negative amp, which is 2 units below. So it's at 0, and then back up to the mid. And this is your curve. Okay? I am going to put another one up on the board. I want you to pause the tape. I want you to try it, and then I'll put the answer. Okay? So, I'll do a cosine. Y equals, I'm going to do a negative, all right? So keep that in mind. -3 cosine of x minus pi plus, I don't know, 4. Okay, so pause the tape here. You try to do it, and then watch me do it. So again, amp, 3, frequency is 1, period is 2 pi over 1, 1/4 of the 2 pi is 2 pi over 4. You could reduce that to pi over 2. Don't know if we're going to need to do that. Starting point is x minus pi is 0, x equal pi. Okay, so my starting point is 1, and I'm moving by 1/2. So to make my life easier, I'll make this 2 over 2, because that actually equals 1, and then I'm able to add with the denominator of 2 to it. I have a vertical shift of 4. When I make my graph, I have to take that into account. That I'm moving the whole graph 4 units up for the middle. So 1, 2, 3, 4. This is my midpoint. Okay? My amp is 3. So the highest value this graph is going to reach, if the middle is 4 and I'm moving 3 up, the highest value is going to be a 7. 5, 6, 7 is going to be the highest amp. And the lowest value, if I'm moving 3 below the mid, is going to be 2, 3, 1 at 1. So my graph has a range from 1 to 7. Okay, so let me label my x-axis. My starting point is 2 pi over 2. I'm moving by 1/2, so that's 3 pi over 2. That's 4 pi over 2. That is 5 pi over 2, and that is going to be 6 pi over 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep. Now be careful. It's a negative. Cosine usually starts at the amp. Under normal circumstances, I would start at the amp, which at this point is 7. But because it's negative, I'm going to start at the negative amp. Then I go to the midline. Then I go to the positive amp. Then I go to the midline. And then I go to the negative amp. Okay, and remember it's a curve. Don't come from down here or anything. It's coming from this direction. And it's going to continue. Of course, I want you to complete 2 complete graphs, but for our purposes, we're only doing 1. Okay, so tonight you're just going to re-practice this. You have all your old notes from this stuff. Okay, so practice graphing sine and cosine curve. Tomorrow I'm going to start you with a completely different topic. Okay, still in trig though. All right, guys, see you soon.